The leaves are crackling, the bones are rattling, and the ghouls and the goblins are out looking to steal your candy. So put down that porno mag and pick up your favorite spooky comic book with America's creepiest Halloween podcast, The Pod People. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, and I want my cake, you dirty bitch!
I'm your resident lunkhead, Ben Sheets.
Tonight, Halloween. It is a Late Night Boys classic episode. Cleveland went and got himself sucked into the fucking sponsor shelf again. I could go reach an arm in there and, maybe dig him out, but I just really don't feel like it. So it's just going to be me and Ben tonight.
OG classic.
Classic. Well,
so we're covering classic horror anthology Creepshow.
Yes, from 1982, screenplay by the legendary Stephen King and directed by George Romero. In fact, the only George Romero film that he himself did not also write. So it was a collaboration between him and King. It's a 5-part anthology spookfest, sort of inspired by and paying homage to the old EC mystery and horror comics of the 1950s. Ben, I won't say this was your pick, but it was kind of your idea. We were looking for something to do for Halloween this year. Is there a particular reason you wanted to go in the Creepshow direction?
Yeah, definitely. So we've done, Halloween, and a little bit of Halloween 3 even, as well as Trick or Treat. So a lot of the main Halloween themed horror movies are out of the way. But, in the spirit of Trick or Treat, which we watched a couple years ago at this point.
I think Trick or Treat was last year.
Oh, well, in honor of Trick or Treat, whenever we watched it, I think this is a good follow-up because I think anthologies are a ton of fun to talk about, and any excuse to cover one is very welcome in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the perfect kind of movie for the Halloween season this year, considering the ongoing pandemic and that can't really go to Halloween parties or go trick-or-treating or anything. Yeah, I think a lot of folks are staying home and watching scary movies, and this is a very lighthearted and fun one.
Yes.
That you really don't have to think too much about.
Absolutely.
I was trying to think earlier if I can remember or recall any real, horror anthology films earlier than this, and I'm sure they exist, but this is the earliest one that comes to mind for me. I feel like this one kind of kick-started the trend of horror anthology movies that has really, kind of exploded in recent years. They're all over the fucking place now.
Yeah. This was totally influential in that respect, as well as, in terms of Creepshow itself. After this, there came the TV show.
And 2 more movies.
Yeah.
And we saw Tales from the Dark Side doing a anthology movie in, I think, 1990 is when that one came out.
Yeah. And then Tales from the Crypt.
Yes.
And that series. And just countless other anthologies spawned from that. But this one is kind of the originator in a lot of ways in terms of popularity. And I think a lot of that comes down to the writing from Stephen King, as well as having George Romero on it. I think those two just bring a lot to the table. And I think, especially with this, they perfectly capture kind of the spirit of the comics.
Yeah, absolutely. When we sat down to watch this, I was convinced that I had seen this movie before, but as we watched it, I started to realize that all of my Creepshow memories are actually from Creepshow 2. So I think this might be the first time I've actually seen this original one. And I think what really stands out to me that I don't remember as much from the second one, could be wrong, it's been years, is the style of this one. It really does lean super heavily into the schlocky, colorful, old comic book style, even going so far as to having actual like little animated sequences that sort of serve as interludes between the horror stories themselves.
Yeah, and you get, fun framing things that look like a comic.
Yes.
Or you get cuts between sequences where it flips the page. A lot of that is super fun, and like you said, it really leans into the comic book type of thing. When there's sequences of horror behind people's heads, it'll become colorful patterns,
kind of almost like German expressionist kind of, like patterns. And anytime something spooky happens, completely unmotivated red and blue lights will shine on the scene, and I found that stuff really charming, actually.
Yeah, it's really endearing, really fun.
It's kind of cute. I would describe a lot of this film as cute. It's obviously pretty low budget, but they make the best of what they had, and there's a lot of talented people working on this. We'll get more into like specific actors and stuff as we talk about each segment, but Tom Savini did all of the makeup and creature effects. I think this is one of his earlier special effects gigs, so that's really nice. He even has a little cameo in it himself. But yeah, let's dive in. As anthology series do, they usually have a kind of framing narrative. This one's extremely basic. A little boy who is played by Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King, who is now a horror writer in his own right, gets his comic book, his spooky Creepshow comic book, thrown away by his asshole dad, who doesn't want no boy of mine's gonna be reading comic books with a skeleton on it. No, sir. And I love that the boy points out that it's no worse than the fucking porno mags that his dad keeps in his underwear drawer. But that just gets him, slapped upside the head like, good parenting on display.
Yeah.
So he gets into his bed to go to sleep and looks out the window and gasp, there's a dollar store skeleton out there.
Yeah, a spooky crypt keeper looking thing.
Yeah, and then it sort of transitions into like the comic booky animation style, and we see the Creepshow comic book blown out of the trash can and into the street, and the wind turns the pages, and we zoom in on our first story, which is called
Father's Day.
Father's Day. It has Ed Harris in it, and he dances really badly.
So this one is probably the shortest outside of the framing narrative of the bunch, I think. I didn't time them or anything, but it feels the most simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of these are pretty simple, but yeah, this one is bare bones, pun intended. It sort of recounts Ed Harris going with his wife to like their family's big mansion or whatever, and the old aunt tells about another creepy old aunt who killed her father because he was mean and called her a bitch and kept saying, I want my cake, it's Father's Day, I want my cake, you dirty bitch. So she bashed his skull in with an ashtray.
Who gets cake for Father's Day?
Yeah, that's something that is a tradition that I'm not familiar with, the Father's Day cake, but
you know what? I respect it. If I become a father at any point, I'm going to demand
a cake.
For every holiday.
And bang your cane on the arms of your chair and scream about getting a cake until your bitch daughter brings it to you.
You better believe I'm getting an Arbor Day cake, a Memorial Day cake, a Martin Luther King Day cake.
Don't forget Columbus Day.
Oh yeah, that's Columbus Day. That'll be a cannoli, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. I mean, so we see the creepy old aunt arrive, and she goes out to the family graveyard like she does, and sort of sits there drinking straight from a bottle of Jim Beam and spills some onto her father's grave, which causes him to rise from the dead from getting whiskey spilled on him. Yeah, and kills her and sort of wanders around killing everybody.
Yeah, well,
there's not much to it.
We do get one really fun sequence where Ed Harris goes out to the graveyard to investigate.
I was going to bring that up as well.
And he falls into the grave and slowly, very, very slowly, does this gravestone fall over onto him.
Yes, I found that pretty confusing because it's like he's laying in the grave looking up and the headstone is being like pushed from behind very slowly, and he has ample opportunity to get up out of the grave before it can be pushed over. But the other thing that I found confusing is before it gets pushed onto his head, he looks up and he sees the skeleton man in front of him. So who's pushing the headstone from behind?
He's got a ghost entourage, obviously.
But Ed Harris makes a hilarious little woo sound right before the.
I find all of the cuts back and forth to the gravestone just so amusing. It reminds me of A Fish Called Wanda, where John Cleese is slowly getting rolled over by the cement roller, and it's coming at him at like 3 miles an hour, just screaming the whole time.
It definitely feels like one of those moments. The skeleton man just basically keeps saying, "I want my cake." Because still, after all these years of being dead, he still hasn't gotten his fucking, his Father's Day cake. So yeah, he goes into the house and kills the other folks in there.
One thing I love about the sequence where he goes into the house, well, there's a couple things, but the one thing that always stands out to me is the use of framing in the composition. Mm-hmm. They have this little window in one of the doors that's used a few times to kind of pop out people. Just in general, I think as a broader point, this movie uses framing really well. A lot of times things are in organic frames within the composition.
Like comic book panels.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then sometimes they just straight up will like shrink the frame and then like draw some like designs around it, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then this one ends with one of the remaining people trying to figure out where everybody's gone and walking into the kitchen, and the skeleton comes out with the aunt's head on a platter covered in icing and saying, "I got my cake," which, I mean, it's not a cake, but, you know, it'll do, I guess.
Yeah. Worthy of a Father's Day cake.
Yes. The next one is called The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrell, and it stars Stephen King as kind of a yokel farmer who has a meteorite land on his property and has fantasies about selling it to the Department of Meteors and getting rich. But it cracks open and starts to spread a mysterious alien growth all over his farm.
You could say this was proto-annihilation.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. It kind of is. Stephen King is pretty funny in this. He is...
Oh, he just hams it up.
He is completely hamming it up. I read that George Romero directed him to play his character like Wile E. Coyote. Which kind of makes a lot of sense because that is what he's doing. Just a lot of like really ridiculously over exaggerated facial expressions. He's got big fake buck teeth, a big unibrow. There's not a whole lot narratively to this one, but I think it has a lot of really cool and fun special effects.
Yeah, seeing all the green growths as they, envelop his house and eventually him is really fun to watch.
Yeah, it starts small with, he touches the meteor at first and it's too hot, and then, the growth starts coming out of his fingers that he's burned, and then he realizes that he's been sucking on them to try to ease the pain, so then he's got the growth on his tongue. And what I really appreciate is that the intensity of his makeup starts changing, like, shot to shot, not just, like, over time. It's like he'll get up and walk into another room, and as he enters the room, he has more growth on him than he did before he walked into the room.
Yeah.
I really like that stuff.
Yeah, no, it's really fun.
The Department of Meteors bit, his fantasy
great.
is really funny.
The guy who plays the Department of Meteors guy, he looks exactly like Rip Torn, which I find just so amusing.
And it should have been Rip Torn.
It should have been. This one's a blast. It's so simple, but I think Stephen King's descent into full ghillie suit man is just so fun to watch.
How do you feel about when he has the vision of his father in the mirror? I thought that kind of came out of nowhere and didn't serve any purpose at all.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre, and it doesn't really fit the tone super well.
It's like there's this weird suggestion that there's like some kind of Verrell curse, or that like Verrells are notoriously unlucky or stupid or something, but that's not really like expounded upon at all. Like that's something that feels very Stephen King, like you would find in one of his novels, but I don't really get the point of including it in something so short and simple, only to have like a spooky old man appear in his mirror and be like, "Damn it, Jordy Verrell, you're so dumb, you're so stupid."
Yeah, I mean, tonally, this one's kind of all over the place. Like, yes. Between that and the ending where he shoots his head off with a shotgun.
Yes, while looking straight up like Oscar the Grouch, like yeah. Just full ghillie suit Muppet man. Yeah, it's totally kind of weird because I feel like that's supposed to be like a sad moment where like he kills himself because he's turned into a plant man.
But he starts off like a Jerry Lewis character. Yeah. Like those two things don't add up.
Yeah, totally. That doesn't jive very well at all.
With that said, I mean, this one's just fun.
It is
overall, so yes. I can't knock it all that much.
Okay, so the next one is called Something to Tide You Over, and it features guest performances from the late great Leslie Nielsen in a non-comedic role, and also a young Ted Danson, which is pretty fun.
I love this one. This one might be my favorite of the bunch. I find the premise so creative. Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson both give just awesome performances.
They do a very good job together. Yeah, it starts with Leslie Nielsen coming to Ted Danson's door and sort of like subtly threatening him, and Ted Danson's like, "Hey man, you better get out of here. I can bench press 300 pounds." But then Leslie Nielsen is revealed to be Ted Danson's girlfriend's ex-husband or ex-lover or something, or her current husband.
Yeah,
I think been cheating on him with Ted Danson.
Current husband.
Is that I was kind of confused about that, but he intimates that he is holding her hostage somewhere, so Ted Danson has to come with him. So they go out to Leslie Nielsen's secluded
private beach
estate, and Leslie Nielsen buries Ted Danson in the sand up to his neck along the tide line, and goes to the trouble of bringing out a TV so Ted Danson can see that his girlfriend is also buried up to her neck somewhere, and so he can watch her drowning as he drowns. Very maniacal rich person revenge scheme.
It's such an overkill thing to do, but I think the reason it works is Leslie Nielsen feels like the perfect evil rich dude. He has kind of that menacing smile where it works in comedy because you're expected to laugh, but it kind of also works here because it kind of throws you off guard a little bit.
I must say, I kind of wish that, especially for like the overall tone of this film, I almost wish Leslie Nielsen had been hamming it up a little bit more. He is an actor with like such great comedic chops that I think not having him push that to like 11 kind of does it a disservice. Not that he's bad or anything, but, I just think it's kind of a little bit of wasted potential. I think we get a little bit of that in the second half of this one. Yeah. Where, he's kind of gloating over his elaborate revenge and his victory against the woman who scorned him and her lover. And then they come back as sea zombies and break into his house, and then they bury him up to his neck.
Yeah. Revenge is definitely a theme in all of these. I guess maybe with the last one too, with the dad, maybe that's supposed to be construed as revenge, because I feel like all the other stories kind of involve revenge in some way or another,
except for the Stephen King one, except for Jordy Verrell. That one doesn't really.
So I wonder.
You're right.
If the dad part was trying to integrate that, but this is a very simple revenge. I think the idea of burying someone up to their neck and letting them drown by the tide is so inventive and fun. It's a creative way of killing someone. That you don't really see.
Well, I think the real standout in this one again is Tom Savini's makeup work on the Ted Danson and the woman zombies. They look really good. Raisiny, puckered, and bloated and covered in seagrass and shit. I love when Ted Danson is buried up to his neck and is raging about the solitary crab that's just kind of like near his face, not really doing anything to him. That one gives me the same kind of vibe of like the Nick Cage Wicker Man. Not the bees! Not the crab!
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. And also just kind of Leslie Nielsen's sanity breaking at the end, and as we see the footprints of the zombies go back into the sea, he's kind of like laughing and he's like, "You can't get me, I can hold my breath for a very, very long time." I love that.
It really elevates itself with the creativity of the premise as well as the acting. And the effects from Tom Savini with the zombies are great. You see so much like moss and seaweed on them.
Apparently, this one was supposed to originally have an alternate ending where instead of the zombies taking him out to the beach, the cops show up. Leslie Nielsen calls the cops, and he tries to show them the security camera footage of like the zombies in his house, but accidentally shows him the video he's taken of his revenge of him drowning them. So they arrest him and send him to death row, and the last shot is him in the gas chamber being executed, saying, "I can hold my breath for a very long time."
Oh, I love that.
I like that too. It's hard to say what the effect would have been actually seeing it if they had done that, but I do think that's a fun alternate ending.
Yeah, I think that's really inventive. I would have loved to see that, man.
Me too. But at the same time, it's also kind of nice that the sea zombies get their revenge. Okay, the next one is called The Crate. And this is about a professor at a university who finds an old, forgotten crate from Antarctica.
An Arctic expedition from like the 1800s.
Mm-hmm. Hidden up under the stairs in the basement of the university, and there's a Sasquatch in it.
Yeah. This one, it's funny because I don't know if it actually is the longest, but it definitely feels like the longest.
Yeah.
I was thinking back on this film before we watched it, and I'd completely forgotten about this one. Like, I always remember the last one as well as the final one, but this one completely escaped my memory. Hal Holbrook gives a pretty good performance as like a submissive
a kind of put upon
lecturer.
Husband who has a drunken nagging bitch wife.
yeah, exactly.
This one has some of my favorite moments. Notably, they're at like this little like party or like social gathering or something, and Hal Holbrook's wife is like walking around basically talking about how like useless her husband is, and how he like, what would you do without, she keeps saying, what would you do without me, what would you do without me, and at one point he just reaches into his coat, pulls out a massive gun and just shoots her in the head, just completely out of nowhere.
And everyone starts clapping.
It turns out to be just like an elaborate daydream fantasy, but that caught me so by surprise. I was absolutely not expecting something like that.
I love how
it's really funny.
Well, the funniest part is like that's not the only time he imagines killing her. Like he imagines strangling her later, and it's just like it's so fun to see his subjective imagination in these sequences.
Yes, well, it's perfect setup too, because his friend is the one who initially finds the crate and pops it open with the janitor to see what's inside, and sees the janitor get attacked by the purple Sasquatch that lives inside the crate. Honestly,
the Sasquatch, just goofy looking.
He's goofy, but I kind of love him. I actually do love him. He is kind of goofy, and he is purple, and he's got a big dumb grin with these big teeth. But I appreciate the effect. It was apparently the first animatronic monster that Tom Savini ever made. So I think for a first effort, it was pretty good. But anyway, so when the lecturer goes to Hal Holbrook and tries to tell him, like, holy shit, I found this monster in this crate that's been there for, however many decades. It's killed a couple of people. Hal Holbrook drugs him and goes to the university, cleans up the mess, and leaves a note for his wife being like, hey, I need you to come to the university, something happened, and I know that you're smarter and better than I am, so you'll be able to handle it, but it's actually a ruse to get the purple Sasquatch to kill his bitch wife.
The perfect crime.
Truly.
I love how the concept is like the purple Sasquatch like eats these people.
Yeah.
in the crate, essentially. And
it seems to have no interest in leaving the crate whatsoever, because after it kills the janitor, they put the crate back under the... Or no, it takes... The Sasquatch takes the crate back under the stairs where they found it and just hangs out under there.
I guess it just keeps all the dead bodies with it in the crate.
Or maybe it eats them all, and there's nothing left. There's nothing left. Just a pair of...
Just a thick boy in there.
Just a pair of glasses. Yeah. So after Hal Holbrook feeds his bitch wife to the purple Sasquatch, he chains up the crate, and they take it and they dump it in the quarry.
I found it really funny that he could dump it into the quarry with all of these bodies in it.
Yes,
like,
it must have weighed
exceptionally heavy.
But he somehow managed to get it up all the stairs and everything. And, then we see the professor who found it in the first place being like, well, what if it gets out? What if it gets out of the crate? And then we see the crate at the bottom of the quarry, and it breaks open, and we see the eyes of the purple Sasquatch. Don't know what the purple Sasquatch is gonna do then.
Yeah, swim up. It's not like he's gonna find him.
Yeah, right.
If anything, he'll find the basement again.
He'll just go back to living under the
stairs. Find a cardboard box.
It's just like a dog that gets lost, he'll always find his way back home. And yeah, he'll get into a cardboard box. He just lives there now. The last thing I want to mention about the crate is when the wife goes to the university, we see her reading the note at the house, and she pours herself a glass of milk. And when she gets to the university, she still has the glass of milk with her. Well,
she had put booze in it too, so it's like a White Russian type of situation. Which is even funnier, honestly, because she was driving with an open just cup of White Russian.
Of just milk and booze. And she takes it with her to the university. Oh, that's
Pulling,
so good.
Ricky from Trailer Park Boys.
Okay, so the final segment is called They're Creeping Up on You. And this is also another pretty simple one about a kind of like evil billionaire germaphobe who lives in this like almost hospital sterile kind of penthouse apartment.
Almost sci-fi looking.
Almost sci-fi looking.
Sterile.
Yeah. Everything is white, and a bunch of cockroaches end up in his apartment.
Yeah.
There's like thousands and thousands and thousands of them, and it's kind of just like him going mad trying to deal with the bug problem that eventually just like consumes his entire apartment and him.
Yeah, well, I mentioned the Buried in Sand one is my favorite one of these shorts. I think that one's my favorite one conceptually, but I think this one is in close running for that because I find this one legitimately creepy and unsettling. Maybe it's just because I fucking hate cockroaches, but there's something really well done about seeing this infestation take place in his house, going from completely sterile and almost futuristically barren to just covered in bugs.
And I think this one also has the most, though still very surface level, like class consciousness about it, where, this guy is like a really truly evil capitalist.
Yeah, it's just like a shithead banker.
Yeah, so one of his employees killed themselves because he fired him or something.
And he was happy about it.
He was happy about it, and like the guy's wife calls him to like scream at him how can you be so callous? And he's like, I'm glad he's dead, ha 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 ha. And of course, he fears the crawling dirty masses like breaking into his sanctuary and overrunning him, and that happens in the form of the bugs. If you had to guess, what would you think this film's cockroach budget was? I have the answer.
$200,000.
You're pretty close, actually. $150,000.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And, well, it was the 80s, so I don't know if they had a full-on cockroach wrangler. Probably.
The cockroaches they bought wholesale for 50 cents a piece, and they used about 250,000 cockroaches in that final sequence. So they spent about $130,000 just on cockroaches. By far the most expensive aspect of the film was just buying a shitload of cockroaches. What do you think they did with all those cockroaches after this was over? Like,
yeah, how do you wrangle them back into...
I mean, a vacuum, probably. Like, you can't just, like, let them go. You can't just unleash a swarm of 250,000 cockroaches.
I'm just imagining, like... Well, you can't even do it with, like, a hand vac, either. You'd have to go, like... I'm just imagining like a Zamboni type of machine just running over all these cockroaches.
Yeah, I agree with you, like, in terms of, like, production design and just, like, how nasty all of the cockroaches are. Like, at the end he goes into, like, his panic room, which is sort of like a glass cube room that he thinks he's safe, and then he sees the blanket on the bed moving, and lifts it up, and it's just crawling with cockroaches, and then they just start to fill the room, and you see from outside, like, the level of the cockroaches rising like
it's
water.
Just a fantastic shot.
Yeah, it's real nasty.
I think the shot where the cockroaches start coming out of him is really intense as well.
Oh yeah, how could I forget that? Yeah, they come out of his mouth and, like, burst out of his throat. That is a really cool effect.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I guess that's that one.
Yeah, and then we have the finale of the container story.
Yes, we see two garbage men, one played by Tom Savini, find the Creepshow comic book, pick it up and start leafing through it, and they're looking at the cutout ads, stuff that you can send in and get fun things, and they see that the authentic voodoo doll ad has already been cut out, and then we cut back to the mother and father having breakfast. And we see little Joe Hill in his room with the voodoo doll from the Creepshow magazine, stabbing it in the throat. And downstairs, his asshole father, clutching his throat and gagging in pain. So yeah, I guess you're right. Like, I hadn't even really thought about how much all of these, except for the Jordy Verrell one, are, like, kind of explicitly revenge themed.
Yeah, which is why I wonder with the dad and the Jordy Verrell one if that was them trying to shoehorn some sort of revenge narrative into it.
It didn't feel like
it doesn't really feel like revenge, which is weird.
Well, I mean, because how would it be revenge? Because, like, the threat is from, like, an alien meteorite. Like, what would the ghost of his father had to do? Like, that doesn't make much sense to me. But, still, it's a fun little piece. I was going to ask which one of the five is your favorite, but you've already said...
Yeah, which one is your favorite?
Something that tied you over. This might come as a surprise. I think my favorite is actually The Crate. It has some of my personal favorite laugh out loud moments. The glass of milk, him having the fantasy about pulling out the gun and shooting his wife, and then everybody applauding.
I think Hal Holbrook probably gives the best performance of the movie in The Crate.
Probably. I think so. Maybe not necessarily my favorite performance. I do love Stephen King's little Wile E. Coyote bit. It's hard to not love that. But Yeah, I think the crate is fun. The monster looks goofy, kind of muppety, but also, I kind of like him. I kind of like the goofy Muppet Sasquatch.
Yeah.
It's a fun effect, and how they really like use the stylized lighting and stuff to their advantage. Whenever the monster attacks, there's like a bright red light. I really like that stuff.
One thing I'll say about this to wrap everything up is Creepshow is a pretty fantastic movie to get people into horror movies, because I think overall it's fairly light. There's a lot of good practical effects. It's fun and funny a lot of times. I think it's not too intense for kids and younger audiences.
It definitely has some gore and some stuff that might freak some squeamish people out. The cockroaches coming out of the dude, the skeleton dad like twisting the woman's head off at the beginning. But ultimately, it's the kind of stuff that you've probably seen a lot worse. But
yeah, it's in like the spirit of a morbid comic book.
Yes, absolutely. But most importantly, it retains that sense of camp and fun. And also, it has the virtue of being an anthology film, so if you don't like one of the segments, you're not stuck with it for an hour and a half,
Like none of them overstay their welcome.
Just like 20 minutes, and then it moves on to something else. On that note, though, are there any segments that you would cut if you had to pare down the film to four stories instead of 5? Because it is 2 hours, and I don't think it's too long. But if you had to get rid of one, what do you think it would be? That's a harder one.
I would probably cut Father's Day, even though I love Ed Harris. Yeah, Ed Harris's performance. I think it's probably the most forgettable of the bunch.
I think I would agree with you. I think that one would be my choice as well, even though I like the skeleton zombie dad. I think that overall that one has the most exposition. There's a lot of talking that I don't particularly care about. If we wanted to keep it like truly thematic for, revenge, then I would cut the Jordy Verrell one, but I enjoy that one too much.
Yeah, that one's too fun.
Cut it. It's too fun. Yeah, cool. Well, is it time to rate? This is a pretty straightforward, fun little film that's not really requiring deep analysis.
There's not a ton going on, but I think it's a classic. And yeah, we should just jump into rating, I guess. I'll just continue.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, this is a great example of a masterclass in use of color, with how colorful the expressionistic lighting is, and as well as a masterclass in framing, whether it's using organic frames within the composition or even, emphasizing the comic booky type of style with like very deliberate frames in the editing. I think that stuff is a ton of fun. I guess I'll go ahead and kind of just rate each one of the little sequences individually.
Okay.
So Father's Day, it's a little messy, but it's so short that I can't really knock it too much. I'd probably give that one a 3.5. Jordy Verrell, Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrell. Stephen King, just a blast to watch. I mean, I don't think thematically it fits in, and kind of tonally it's all over the place, but he's so much fun in it that I can't knock it. I'll give that one a 4. Something to Tide You Over, I think, is really creative and inventive. I'll give that one a 4.5. The Crate, I will give a 4. I think Hal Holbrook gives a really fun performance, and while it's a little long, I do think the Sasquatch is really fun. And then They're Creeping Up on You, I'll give a 5. because it's probably my favorite in terms of creep level. I think it really gets under your skin in a way that only bugs can. I think it's really interesting stylistically and really visceral. I think it's great. I don't know what that makes overall,
that
but
will give your average rating for Creepshow a 4.2 out of 5 pods. I was just gonna give a rating for the whole thing overall, but in the interest of fun, I will do the same. I would say Father's Day, it's got probably the weakest characters of the 5. I do like Ed Harris's bad dancing and his inability to get out of the way of a slow-moving death. I'm going to give that a 3 out of 5. The lonesome death of Jordy Verrell is probably the most fun and hokey, and I love Stephen King and love his extremely cartoonish performance. I'm going to give that one a 4 out of 5. Something to Tide You Over. Yeah, similar. I enjoyed it a lot. I like Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen in this. I wish they had pushed Leslie Nielsen's performance a little bit farther. I think it would have brought the ham factor up. I'm going to give that one a 3.5 out of 5. The Crate, my favorite one, everything I've already said, fun purple Sasquatch, booze milk, all of those things, makes it really delightful. I'm going to give that one a 4 out of 5. And then They're Creeping Up on You. I think I'm going to give that one a 4 out of 5 as well. Very simple, not a whole lot to it, but goddamn, they spent a lot of money on cockroaches and some really fun special effects. So that will give my average rating for Creepshow a 3.7 out of 5 pods, which seems about right because I was initially going to give it a 3.5. So together our average is a 3.95. We'll just call it a 4. Our average is 4 out of 5 pods for this one. A very lighthearted, fun little anthology film to check out. You'll see a lot of familiar faces. The combination of Stephen King and George Romero plus Tom Savini makes for some really fun, creative little segments.
Yeah, put it on while everyone's out trick-or-treating.
Mm-hmm. Or not, because if you go trick-or-treating, you're just gonna catch COVID. Next week, it is my pick.
Yep.
And I'm just continuing my trend of little indie 2020 horror films that haven't gotten a lot of buzz but seem interesting. So next week, we're going to watch The Beach House. Don't know much about it. I know that it is a Shudder film, and it was recommended by Jay Bauman of Red Letter Media, and I generally trust his recommendations, so we're going to check it out. Don't know what it's going to be like, but we'll see. So come back next week to hear us talk about that. And until then, if you like the show and you enjoyed spending your Halloween with us boys, then share an episode with your friend. Spread the spooky cheer. You can head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and a nice review. That would mean a lot. Help us move up in the numbers. Follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod and our Letterboxd page at letterboxd.com/PodPeoplePod, where you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those episodes. I am on Twitter at Deep State Ozzy.
I'm on Twitter at Mr. Sheets.
And because I know he would want us to Cleveland has been doing work with Dread XP lately. They just released this last week the Dread Collection 3, Dread X Collection 3. So go check that out for another anthology game of spooky indie horror games. And I believe that today they are doing a Halloween indie horror game showcase, which features our very own It Stares Back. So if you want to know more about that, check out Dread XP on Twitter, or also our Light Arc Studio Twitter, at Light Arc Studio. I hope that does it justice. Cleveland is in the sponsor shelf, so if not, that's too bad. That's on him. Come back next week as we take a trip to the beach. And until then, happy Halloween. Keep it spooky. And don't get COVID.